Good afternoon, everyone. It's Flagler County Board of County Commissioners Workshop, July 17th, 2023. It's 1 o'clock. If you'd all please rise and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now if you'd please join me in a moment of silence where we think about all the great things we have in life and how lucky we are to be here. And think about our first responders that keep us safe every day, and our men and women in the armed forces that have continued to keep us safe around the clock. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Well, again, welcome everybody. The first item we're going to discuss today, I guess, is the county roadway and funding gap discussion. And Heidi, are you going to lead that, or is?
Good afternoon. Actually, I'm going to have Ryan Pravat. He's your Public Works Road and Bridge Manager, and he's going to do the first half, and then I'll take over after that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, Ryan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ryan Pravat, Road and Bridge Manager. I'd like to thank you for the time in allowing us to present and up-to-date you on the current status of our paved roadways in Flagler County. To provide a little history, back in 2021, Flagler County entered into a contract with PMG, which some of you might remember. PMG stands for the Pavement Management Group. This group conducted a pavement condition study. The study was to provide a snapshot of the then current condition of the paved roads, assessing them with both a condition and a score. Today, I hope to provide you with an update of the changes since that time and discuss our pavement management strategy moving forward. It starts with the basis of the foundation of this board's strategic plan. As it pertains to our roadways, through the strategic plan process, a priority was recognized on growth and infrastructure, especially as we continue to grow as a community. Under growth and infrastructure, the number one goal is to provide quality, fundamental infrastructure and assets. We strive to meet this goal through the objective of expanding or improving our infrastructure by making surface transportation improvements. And second, by improving our budget planning and forecasting for those capital improvements on an annual basis. As you can see, the total Flagler County roadway network consists of 94 miles, equaling 188 lane miles. This roadway asset is valued at approximately $150 million based on the current values provided by the FDOT. You may ask, so how do we evaluate our roads? We use two methods. The PCI is performed by an outside contractor every 3 to 5 years, which is the industry standard. The PCI approach is a more in-depth evaluation of our pavement health. And annually, using in-house staff, we use the PACER method as a visual examination of our roadway network to identify any changes that may have occurred and update our capital plans. PCI scores consist of a third-party evaluation with uploaded video footage into paver software. The PACER method provides a less costly and time-effective manner to collect pavement surface data. So what is a pavement management system? Put simply, it's an organized way to approach pavement preservation, maintenance, and rehabilitation in the most cost-effective manner with the goal of extending the life cycle of the roadway infrastructure. It's about applying the right treatment to the right road at the right time, resulting in numerous benefits. This slide is a visual of how to utilize proper asphalt pavement maintenance strategies. Given that we have limited funding, we are not allowed to follow the strategies completely. As you can see from this chart, as you apply various treatments like fog seal, chip seal, microsurfacing, The return on investment doesn't always restore to the condition of the road to a much higher improved rating. Although these methods do provide some extension of the life of a roadway, due to the limited funding and length of time we have to treat the roadway, we recommend on spending and focusing the money towards to utilize the asphalt mill and overlay method. Although this approach is more costly, in the long run, the return on investment to restore the road to a higher standard is achieved. So what exactly is fog seal? It's a single application of an asphalt emulsion onto existing pavement surface for maintenance purposes. This helps renew the pavement and seal minor cracks. Typically, fog seal is applied to a roadway every 1 to 3 years after it has initially been paved. Chip and seal. This is a thin film of heated asphalt liquefied, followed by small rock chips that are compacted to the road surface to maximize adherence to the asphalt. Some disadvantages of chip and seal are the rough porous surface created by the presence of loose aggregate, and over time this loose aggregate will sometimes break away and chip away. Microsurfacing. This is a protective coating used to extend the life of pavement. It is used to renew the surface and seal minor cracks and other irregularities. Microsurfacing typically serves a lifespan from 5 to 7 years before it requires reapplication. Please keep in mind, for a road to be eligible to receive microsurfacing, it needs to have a PCI score of 68 or higher, or a PACER score of 6 or higher. What is an overlay? Or what is a mill and overlay? It's a common technique used to prolong the life of a road by grinding down the top layer of asphalt and installing a new layer of asphalt in its place. Overlay or resurfacing treated roads may undergo repairs to fix cracks or potholes beforehand, but this will ultimately extend the life of the road. This is what you'll see most paving operations when they come through. They'll go in mill and then overlay.
Brian, does the, if you use the fog method every couple of years, does that extend the life of the road?
It does, but you have to do it initially. After year 1 and 2, you do it. Usually you do it one time and it kind of extends it for a little while. So there's been some success, but not a lot of counties use it. I know St. John's uses it on very few roads, but they're about the only ones that I know. And
Okay.
The critical part is to do it, if you're going to fog seal, is to go ahead and do it the first year or two after initial paving. So.
Okay, thanks.
So back in 2021, when PMG evaluated our network of roads, they determined our average PCI score was 74, which is considered good. As you look at this slide, the table to the left is a PCI rating matrix, which assigns a condition to the range of PCI values. To the right is a condition assessment of our network of roads as they were in 2021. So how do we compare today? Utilizing in-house staff and the PACER rating scale, here's a look at our roads today. Again, as you look at the slides, the table to the left is a PACER rating metric, which assigns a condition to the range of PACER scores. To the right is a condition assessment of our network of roads, as they are today in 2023. We did add 5 total miles from Bay Drive and Water Oak Road paving projects, and we also maintained an average score of good. Through the efforts of our engineering department and FDOT, we anticipate over the next 5 years to have the unpaved portions of Marine Land Acres, Old Hall Creek Road, Hargrove Grave, County Road 90 West, and various roads in Daytona North receive paving efforts.
Good, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question.
Yes, Dave.
We have a lot of dirt roads in the county. Do they get rated in this system, or only roads that have been surfaced with asphalt or concrete?
We only score and grade the paved roads. We do an inventory every year. We try to do it before hurricane season on the unpaved roads because for FEMA reimbursements, it's really hard to get reimbursement if you don't have existing conditions. So before hurricane season, we'll try to go through and we'll use the same process that they use for pavement management, like as far as collecting data, the SOP of going from south to north, west to east, intersection, and we do maintain video footage of those. Just for
It's not included in this analysis?
No, sir.
Okay.
Ryan, can you just repeat what you said before? Commissioner Sullivan's question about the roads that you're addressing now.
Paved roads.
Yeah. You read off a list of roads. What I wanted to.
Oh,
just
the
wanna
list
hear
of
those
roads
ag-
that we-
I wanted to hear those again, and I was going to ask you a question as to how
Okay.
many miles that adds up to.
Okay. Marine Land Acres, Old Hall Creek Road, Hargrove Grave, County Road 90 West, and various roads in Daytona North, the east section that they planned on paving.
You know how many miles that adds up?
I'd have to get back with you on those exact amounts, but we have it, we have that information available. I'd be happy to get it to you.
And I'm assuming we're working from the bottom up on this chart on the right, in terms of repaving or addressing the roads. In other words, the failed and the very.
Oh, no, I'll get to that a little
list he
bit
gave you,
later.
those are stuff that we're paving right now. Right this minute, we're paving those.
Yeah, I was just wondering if they fall into these categories. In other words, are they one of the 9 roads that are in the poor category? And
No, Marine Land Acres, for instance, was
Well, that's
not.
different, yeah.
Yeah, it
yes,
was
sir.
not paved, and
Yeah,
now we're paving.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they were all unpaved roads. So.
okay, got it.
Take note of the lane miles currently in good and fair condition. These are the road surfaces that are required action with the pavement management plan. Pavement deteriorates at a predictable rate. As the graph below shows, the deterioration is slow for the first 3 quarters of its life cycle. Then the final quarter, the deterioration accelerates rapidly. Once it reaches the critical condition, the pavement must undergo extensive reconstruction efforts. Delaying the need for reconstruction would save the county significantly. This can be accomplished through roadway pavement management programs that involve regular application of inexpensive preventative maintenance. As you can see, over time, the cost of restoring the roads increases significantly. Total road reconstruction, which involves the removal of the compromised road base, then an installation of new road base material, increases the cost 3 to 5 times that of a simple mill and overlay operation. Most of the time, this is achieved with what they call full depth reclamation, where they go in there and have to mix up everything, sub-base and asphalt and everything. Here's a look at some of our roads today. Example 1, this Malacompa Road, the project was completed in 2023 with mill and overlay occurring in November and December of 2022. The surface treatment occurred when the Pacer score reflected a fair condition, which was the optimal time. Milling and repaving was done before any base failure occurred. Malacompa Road will be annually evaluated and scored condition and updated accordingly, receiving maintenance efforts when required. Example number 2. This is Lancewood Street in Daytona North. Pacer scores reflect a good condition. Under a comprehensive pavement management plan, this road is a perfect candidate to be placed on a schedule for a mill and overlay or microsurfacing operations in the future. Lancewood Street will present the need for a surface treatment in the near future. As you can kind of see from the pictures there, there's minimal cracking. The asphalt's kind of fading out, but there's very minimal cracking. And this was one of those roads that scored anywhere between 70 and 80 with the PCI. Example 3. The Pacer is of Avocado Boulevard. The Pacer score was fair condition on this road. The road currently needs extensive asphalt patching and repairs and will require mill and overlay operations. With available funding for a pavement preservation and management plan, Avocado would require immediate action to preserve the roadway to prevent an increase in cost of the entire road having to be reconstructed. Left unaddressed for a few more years, base failure will likely occur. And you can kind of see in that picture, you can see some of those latitudinal and longitudinal cracking. You can see like we've done some pothole repair on there, so that's one of them that you'd want to address sooner than later. Example 4, the Pacer score was failed condition on Rodeo Road. Rodeo Road and the surrounding roads in the Reimer Ridge area will require complete reconstruction or full depth reclamation. The surface treatments are not an option at this point, and the cost will be increased 3 to 5 times that of a mill and overlay operation. Reimer Ridge area currently is scheduled for reconstruction efforts in fiscal year 2026-27. Historically, Flagler County has not had a defined pavement management plan to address the ongoing maintenance requirements or prolonging the life of our roadway assets. Moving forward with the creation of a pavement management plan, we aim to address this issue. We will continue to utilize an outside consultant every 3 to 5 years to perform PCI testing on our roadways, while also using in-house resources to evaluate annually using the PACER method. This is because sometimes road can deteriorate at a faster rate because of construction. One that comes to mind is Roberts Road. It scored really good when they came in and did the PCIs, what PMG did, and all the construction is kind of, the scores have dropped dramatically, so it's really good to do this yearly, that way you have an idea, you can adjust your plan. Our approach is to begin with determining the pavement condition of each roadway segment within our jurisdiction, conducting a condition assessment, compiling the date to develop a list of projects for implementation, and prioritize those projects to meet the reserve funding levels on an annual basis to a dedicated roadway rehabilitation program. We will work closely with our county engineering department to evaluate our approach towards maintenance as well as theirs towards the 5-year capital plan. Our goal is to apply pavement preservation techniques and overlay roads on a schedule of every 12 to 15 years, depending upon the visual conditions and understanding there are other factors that contribute to scheduled work. Here's a snapshot of our proposed 5-year pavement management plan. Based on the immediate needs, on average, we look to address 5.32 miles of road per year with an overlay or mill project at an average annual cost of $2.3 million. We will also begin to include other routine preservations and maintenance items when necessary based on the availability of funds to begin our pavement preservation efforts. This list of proposed projects does not include any stormwater-related activities. These are simply just for roadway surfaces.
Where's rodeo on that plan?
Rodeo is not on that plan because this does not reflect the DOT 5-year work program. So that's what rodeo will be addressed in 26, 27 with that. This is just our pavement management plan, which is kind of separate from the 5-year. We took into account what was going to be addressed with the 5-year work plan, what had construction funding, and these are the roads that were not on there.
So the roads on this in 2024 did not get paved.
These roads? In 2024, that's what we propose are getting paved with the pavement management plan.
Okay.
That's what we're proposing.
But they're not in the 5-year plan right now?
No, sir.
I think just to clarify something,
That doesn't
what
make
you're
sense.
used to seeing is from engineering, and they bring forward the FDOT 5-year work plan.
Right.
So you have those roads that have already failed or are at a critical step, and those are the ones that engineering is tackling now. What Ryan is proposing to this board is having a more proactive approach rather than reactive, and is proposing that we create a 5-year pavement management plan that would be maintained and handled through Public Works, Road and Bridge.
So the
So-
2024 roads are in addition to the FDOT 5-year plan?
So we're going to go over that piece next, the engineering piece, but what he's proposing to you is what he's looking at from a maintenance standpoint to fix these roads before they deteriorate and get to be millions of dollars per road. So it's two separate things. What he's proposing here, we do not have funding dedicated for it. He's trying to share the importance of creating dedicated funding for this. And then we're going to go over the engineering, what they've got on their plan a little bit later after his presentation.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question on this particular list. For instance, I live in Grand Haven. We do our own roads. Sugar Mill seems like a separate private place, but apparently their roads are purely public roads. And I think that's true. When you go in there, there's no gate. But it's interesting that they're going to get their roads done, and the clientele who live there are clearly very similar to a number of other private places throughout the county. No big deal, just a minor point.
It's one of our gas taxable roadways that we collect gas tax funding from, and we may do maintenance just curb to curb in that road. We don't do anything other than the asphalt. We have a couple like that. Ormond Beach is one. There's several throughout the county.
Okay.
Staff's recommendations are create a master pavement preservation management plan, address roads that are in optimal condition to receive surface treatment rehabilitation at this current time, and those that will be in need to be addressed in the future. Roads that currently present the signs of base failure should be left off any proposed plan until they receive reconstruction efforts and have the capability of receiving surface treatment options. Before these identified roads are reconstructed, maintenance will continue on these to make minor repairs such as potholes and shoulder work. And also, part of our recommendation is explore the funding options to support a pavement management plan at an average annual cost of $2.3 million. Does anyone have any questions?
Commissioners? Leanne?
The dirt roads in the county, how do we intend to address them? They would be addressed through the FDOT solely, since they're not paved?
Some of them would be addressed through FDOT projects or other capital projects. It's probably something that would go on a CIP, so, yeah. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan. That was a good presentation. Thank you. Heidi?
Thank you, and thanks, Ryan, for that detailed presentation. Currently, Public Works, Road and Bridge, relies on gas tax. That's their only revenue stream that they have right now, and that is completely for the road maintenance that's being performed now on county roads. We recognize the fact that the gas tax has been dwindling over the last several years. When you look at Public Works in total, their annual operating budget is approximately about $3.5 million. It really depends on how much gas tax is collected. But when you look at that budget of the $3.5 million, almost half of it is spent on stormwater-related issues as it relates to our roadway. So when you look at the need for stormwater, I know at the end of the month, you'll be getting a presentation from engineering staff regarding the stormwater plan. And part of that, at some point, is going to be a funding of how do you fund that. If we can ever get to a point where we can transition the stormwater piece and get it away from the gas tax, it would certainly free up some money that can be better spent on maintaining the roads and not stormwater. So I just wanted to share that. But let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the county roadway and bridge infrastructure. So right now, Flagler County depends on its roadway and bridge infrastructure for the movement of both people and goods, with safety being the top priority. Public Works, our road and bridge staff, they handle the day-to-day field operations as far as like maintenance and rehabilitation, things like that. And then our engineering department handles the capital outlay portion, either seeking state or federal grants that are used for either construction, reconstruction, replacement, or rehabilitation. So when you look at the local program funding that's available or the monies that the county has historically used, they come in two different forms. We've been very successful in seeking money for both of these, for roadways and for bridge improvements. But the first one is on the federal level. It's the what's known as a LAP grant, or a local agency program. Typically, those are used, federal dollars. It's managed by FDOT. They provide the oversight. But it is used to develop, design, and construct roadways. When you look at the FDOT, on that one, I'm sorry, there is no local match requirement on the federal grants. And then as you transition over to the state, they have two programs that are available to Flagler County as a small county. So you've got what's known as SCRAP and SCOP, your Small County Road Assistance Program, and then your Small County Outreach Program. We are designated as a small county. You'll see with SCRAP, the qualifying entity there is that our population had to be below 75,000 back in 1990. Our population back then was under 29,000, so certainly we qualify under scrap. But scrap projects are used primarily for resurfacing and reconstructing roads. It's not for capacity issues. This is strictly just for resurfacing and reconstructing county roads, but they had to be in existence back in when this was passed back in 1990. So it's not for the development of new roads, but that's what that funding's for. And then your SCOP, or your small county outreach, that is used for repairing or rehabilitating your bridges, your roads. This is the piece that you'll take unpaved roads and you'll apply pavement to it, things like that. This one is, as long as we maintain our population of 200,000 residents or less, then we will qualify as a small county through this program. On the SCOP program, both of these FDOT programs are covered through Florida statute, where they outline the way the programs work. So when you look at scrap, there is no local match. On the SCOP, the way it's split up, it's 75% state, 25% local. We have been successful in not having to pay the match in some instances. However, when you look into it, the issue isn't necessarily always the local match. The issue or challenge becomes by the time this project or any project gets programmed into the state system, by the time you have your engineered estimates of cost and then you get ready to bid, many times the bids come in much higher than what's already allowed in the program. And the state of Florida FDOT has worked with us in the past if they had any available funds, but typically they don't have extra funds. They require the county at its own expense to cover that gap. So that way it keeps their projects intact and it keeps the money kind of spread out evenly. If every time you went back to the well to ask for money, it's going to take away from other communities. So once they delve out the money that's available, they want you to stick to it, and they look to the county to pay the difference if there is a shortfall.
Could I just, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question on the funding. For instance, we're doing a lot of work north on A1A with stormwater, sewer water, piping, things like that, and we issue contracts for that kind of work. In those contracts, is road resurfacing included, and how is that funded? Is it funded in that contract, or do you have to go back and separate it out and put it in the road and bridge reconstruction stuff?
I'm not sure what project you're referring to.
Well, we're out in on A1A to the north, where we're changing over from dirt roads to regular roads, but we're also putting in water.
That's not part of
systems.
this program.
No, but I mean, is there a road resurfacing part of those contracts separate from this program?
Well, they're putting down
I
they're
think you're-
paving for the first time.
I think you're referring to like Apache, First Ave, that area,
right.
north of Malacompra.
Right.
That's completely different. It's not a road resurfacing project. They're converting unpaved to paved. So that would have received, you probably either had a LAP or one of these state
So
programs.
one of these
would have paid for that.
funds would pay
Yeah.
for that part of the project, of the
Yes.
contract? Okay.
And that got greatly reduced, so we had enough money to actually do the project.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we had eliminated some portions of
Yeah, we did.
streets that weren't going to be seeking pavement, so it kind of helped fill that gap. But one of the things, we are going to eventually exceed our population, and maybe they'll address it every year and they keep changing what a small county is, but it's anticipated that we'd probably get to that 200,000 in probably about 17 years. I think it was like 2040 projection of Bieber. So again, that's, a lot of things can change, so. So this is what you've seen as a board. This is the FDOT 5-year work plan program. So this is what is scheduled from next year, 2024, through 2028. And if you look at these, the top one's not so much of a challenge, and I think you have some more detailed handouts that kind of show up the available funds. on some of these. So they may be a combination of state dollars, appropriations, impact fees, what makes up that total available funds. That project isn't bad. The first one, which is the Flagler Central Commerce Parkway connector, that's between US 1 and State Road 100. Right now, you're showing that it's got a little bit of a surplus. That'll likely go away when that project moves forward towards bidding it out. But then as you start going through the list, Old Hall Creek is one of them that was mentioned earlier, where we would look to add pavement miles. But if you look at the available funds and you look at the estimated cost right now, and this is before it gets bid out, we're already $1 million short. So that $1 million is going to have to be made up at the local level, which would be the county. Again, that is based on an estimate from the engineers, outside engineers, not internal staff, but when they do these projects and they do the costing of them, it's already been funded at the state level. So that shortfall would have to be made up at the local level. And then when you bid it out, likely it'll come in a little bit higher than that. So you might be facing $1.5 million to $2 million on that project. And that's just on Old Hall Creek. But as you go through, I mean, similar trends. So when you look at the shaded area of the shortfall and surplus, it kind of provides a little bit of a summary to you. So if you're looking at the projects slated for 2024, in total, it's about $3 million. We already know it. It's going to be $3 million short. And then as you start moving out into the out years, not all of those projects have been fully vetted, but they're already showing a shortfall. So when you look at the 5-year FDOT work plan program over the next 5 years, you're going to be short about I think it's 5.6 million. 5.6. And again, those numbers are all subject to change because we won't have hard numbers until they actually go out for bid. So this is just an estimate, but we know we're going to have an issue here. And there are things, options that we could do. Simply, we could just not, cancel the project and not do it. We could look to scale back, value engineer, maybe do it in phases. But there will be a requirement for local money. So just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Heidi, is
Yes,
it
sir.
possible to move some of those around? For instance, the old Hall Creek Road, you don't have enough money, but you would have enough money if you did the Rima Ridge project, which picks up Rodeo Road, which is terrible shape.
Well, these have already been vetted through FDOT.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Can you move it around or no? I mean, if you can't move stuff around, then.
I don't believe you can because once they get into the program, you have a design phase and then you have a construction phase. So not knowing how far along Rima Ridge is in the process,
Okay.
likelihood is probably no, because when we submit these plans to FDOT, they'd like to see that we're sticking to our plan and that things haven't changed. So, and it could be a different type of monies that are being used as well that determine the priority of when these things are getting done. So, but this is a look at your 5-year work plan program. These are 22 other projects that are not that weren't on that previous screen. So here's the recommended list, and again, this is going to be covering over the next 5 years. None of these projects right now have funding. I know we had talked internally about, do we put the number 1 item on here, the County Road 304 bridge replacement construction, do we add that to our legislative ask for next year? Internally, we've talked about it. I'm not sure if we're going to discuss it today. It may come up. But when you look at the number 2 on this project, the 304 resurfacing segment 2, this is for the second phase of this project with County Road 304 from 305 to State Road 11 already being funded in another year. But we're already anticipating a shortfall on that project, and it's on the list for 2026. I think that section, the first phase, phase 1, that hasn't begun, is already showing a shortfall of $1.5 million. And I think to put it in perspective for the folks that have been here any length of time, when you look at Water Oak Road, we recognize that that's one of the projects that we just completed. Well, Phase 1 of Water Oak was 10 years ago. That's how long it's taken us to pave the rest of it. So it took 10 years to finish Water Oak, from the first phase to the second phase.
So the FDOT program does not include the bridge.
It does include bridges. There is programs that replace the bridges, like I can recall, I don't know what year it was, several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 10 plus, where we did all of the bridge replacements on 305. You had a series of bridge replacements that are out on 305, if you recall.
Right, but the current FDOT work plan has the 304 resurfacing in it.
You're talking about the one that's funded last year, this,
Yep.
yeah, well, as far as the priority, and Faith can probably explain why one gets picked up over the other, but you have them in sections, so typically the cost is probably a driving factor that they end up doing these in several phases because there's probably not enough money at the district level.
Well, my question is does that pick up the bridge replacement?
I can have Faith talk about the
No,
scope of the project, I'm not
Is that part
sure.
of the funding for the 304, County Road 304 to 100?
Good morning, Commissioners. Faith Al-Khatib, County Engineer. I will try to do my best to go over some of the stuff. 19 years ago, we started creating 5-year work program, and this is not only FDOT 5-year work program, and it is Flagler County 5-year work program. But with the funding available, it ended up to be just FDOT 5-year work program. So most of these projects has been on the list based on the priority list and based on the needs. When we evaluate these roadways, it depends. Is it evacuation routes? It's the level of the service and the condition of these roadways. And also, it is if it's structure deficient, like the bridges. As you know, previously, we replaced 5 bridges on County Road 305. We ended up doing them in phases. We did resurface County Road 305 at that time. Most of these projects has been on our list for at least 19 years. Just to get you how long it has been on this list. If you look at our list 19 years ago and until last May when we presented to you the 5-year program, it's the same roadway there. So we create a cost estimate, we define the roadway, we define the scope of work of this project. When we created a cost estimate and we do an intake meeting with the FDOT, and FDOT, they will identify the source of funding available to Flagler County. It's going to be SCOP, SCRAP, SIGB, federal. It depends what kind of funding available. And all these kind of different source of funding, it depends on the location of that roadway. Like Marineland Acres, we got $12 million, and that was SIGB funding. Because of the location, it's tied to A1A, so it was eligible for this kind of funding. So with that said, when Commissioner Hansen, he asked about County Road 304, the project funded part of this 5-year work program, I think next year or the following year, I don't know what's the list you have in front of you, it's from County Road 305.
26.
Correct. Okay, so that means, and I don't know if that's 26, the funding will be available July 25th, or it's going to be fiscal year 26. I don't have that spreadsheet.
Okay, my question was, though, in that funding for County Road 304, does that include the bridge replacement?
No, it's
That's
not.
separate.
It's only for a
for the-
segment of
okay.
from County Road 305 to State Road 11. To replace these bridges, we are looking at least 15 or 20 million. And again, I apologize, I was not ready. I did not know I will be speaking today. So we are looking to replace 4 bridges. And with the economy, what's happening there, we talk about 10, 15, 20 million at least. So we have the option to break that project to 4 different projects or do them as one project. Answering your question, can we move the funding from one project to another? Yes, Commissioner, we can do that. And the way how we can do that, we have to coordinate with FGT. It depends on what fiscal year. It depends if the funding it will be available. So with all that said, you have the option to eliminate one of your projects. we have the option when we advertise for the project and the bids coming in, we can do value engineering the same way how we did for County Road 90. You did see when we did it. When we take a look at one of these projects, it's not only to pave a roadway. Basically, we are reconstructing. We are including drainage improvement, pavement, striping, you can name it, and that's why it takes a lot of funding to do that. So the last 3 years, you can see what happened recently when we have FTOT, they program the grant funding. And then when the engineer finished the design phase, they will update their cost estimate. We are obligated as an engineers to provide our cost estimate to FDOT staff. FDOT staff, they come back and say, okay, we only allocated 3 million. Your budget, your cost estimate, 4 million. There is shortfall. So what if Flagler County want to do? We are not going to be giving you the agreement until you have a funding allocated for the total project cost. It has been happening recently because, again, the economy, what happened there. And they have been, FDT, they have been great working with us. If any funding available, they will come and give us the funding. You did witness that, a lot of opportunity, they will give us that funding. But to get the agreement and to obligate the grant, we have to match the cost estimate with the funding available. So as she mentioned, one of the project, $1 million shortfall based on the cost estimate. We get the agreement, we advertise for it. When the bid's coming in, nobody knows how the bids will be coming in, lower or higher. And that's when us as a team, we make a decision. Let's do it in phases, we cannot afford it, and it has been happening recently with most of our projects for the last 2 years. Did I answer your question, Commissioner?
Yeah, I think so. Any question? Okay, thank you, Faith. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Faith. So now we're going to talk about some of the additional needs. So we already know that we have a shortfall on potentially some of the projects that you already have in your plan. But then when you look at the other needs moving forward, and as we continue to transition from a small county to a medium-sized county, we need to develop a plan while we still qualify for small county funding. And what does that look like? So right now, you've got a total of 7 roadways that have bridges that will need to be replaced at some time. Right now, they receive, inspections and some light maintenance. Some of these bridge replacements may be for capacity issues in the future. I know one of them that I had talked to one of the commissioners about was the Old Kings Road North, the piece that goes over I-95, how it's not pedestrian friendly. It's very narrow. It's old. I'm not saying that it's in poor condition, but as we continue to grow as a community, these are seven roadways that have bridges that at some time are going to need to be replaced. When you look at the amount of unpaved roads that make up our network of roadways in Flagler County, right now, you've got 130 centerline miles of unpaved, which is 260 miles of unpaved roads. If you look at today's construction cost estimate from FDOT, what they put out in their publication, you're looking at, if you were to, obviously we're not going to pave them all at once, but it's about $208 million to pave all of the existing roadways that are unpaved now, to convert them over to pavement. If you had to come up with a match on those, it would be about $52 million. Again, I don't think that we're going to be doing this overnight, but we need to have a plan, and what does that look like moving forward? One of the things that did come before the board came out of the River to Sea TPO, and it's called the Safe Street and Roads for All. And that is the recent Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's referred to as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, where it's going to be providing about $5 billion in discretionary grant programs with $1 billion a year over the next 5 years. The purpose is to prevent deaths and serious injuries on roadways. The focus is on comprehensive safety action planning, implementing projects and strategies identified in the safety action plan. So working with River to Sea TPO, we've partnered up with them and Volusia County in conducting a planning phase through the planning grant. And then what will happen is they'll identify projects or things that they're going to recommend moving forward. So that award was for about $400,000 in that grant. It got approved, I think it was June 28th of this year. But you should have the plan should be complete in April of 2025, and then the actual report should make its way to us in June of 2025. If there are projects on there that we deem we need in our community here, there is going to be a local match. There is a 20% local match on those. So it's great that the federal government has, funding available to help make the roads safer, but locally, we need 20% of anything we're going to try to implement through that. So I just want to put that on your radar as something to be mindful of moving forward. That brings us up to the financial need. So
Could I just ask one question on that last slide? On the unpaved roads, is there any chance that some of those could become part of developments where the developer would do a lot of the road construction, or these been sorted out so that there's no chance of that happening?
I don't know if I understand like the sorted out part, but these are our existing roads. They're current public roads that the county maintains now.
Sometimes, developers come in and want to build something near those and that kind of thing. Do we ever get the benefit of that and ending up paving some of our unpaved roads?
I'm not aware of any projects on the near horizon that are tied to any of our dirt roads, not that I can think of. Part of the challenge is, as Bunnell annexed and took in land going west, where typically we have a higher inventory of dirt roads, Bunnell did not annex in the roads, so the roads are county-maintained county roads, but, the land around it may have been annexed into Bunnell.
I'm just thinking of big developments as they come in, sometimes include stuff that was already, just old roads that were in there.
Yeah,
But anyway.
I can't think of any.
No big deal. I'm just trying to, is that 130 centerline miles, no chance of any of that being covered by, say, a large developer, that kind of thing?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. That's the question.
Ms. Sullivan, on the $400,000 grant that you got that for us. But that was shared with Volusia, so we're not on the
We have
hook
a
for the
smaller
full.
piece of that, right?
Yeah, we don't have to pay the 20%.
Right.
Right, okay.
It would be a total of 20, so we probably split it with Volusia County on the actual study for the plan. But if there were projects that came out as a result and they were to be in Flagler, we'd have to pay the 20. We don't get the benefit of
20%,
Volusia paying. So moving forward, what is the financial need? We heard earlier from Public Works about their need to establish a more proactive approach to pavement management with the development of a plan, if that were to happen. They're looking at or needing about $2.6 million on average annually to float that program for the next 5 years. I know that the piece for next year, if it were ever to get approved, it was only about 2 million, but I think that average of 2.6 helps keep it where it's level from year to year, and so you're not having peaks and valleys, because I think in year 5 you had a project that was over 4 million. So by setting aside 2.6 million a year on average for the next 5 years would take care of those programs. Moving forward, when you look at the stuff that's already programmed with FDOT on the 5-year work program, they're showing right now, and again, it's subject to change, and so far things haven't really been going down, but it's $5.6 million is the current shortfall over the next 5 years on the FDOT work plan. Again, as Faith pointed out, you could scale it back, value engineer, do it in phases, whatever that looks like. But we already know that we're going to have a shortfall over the next 5 years. When you look at the deficit right now for fiscal year '24, it's upwards, it's almost $3 million. Then there's the 5-year work plan, the 22 items that were part of that list to be determined as far as pricing, but I anticipate there will be a shortfall there, only because of the price of materials and construction continually going up. We don't have a value on the bridge replacement. As I mentioned, you have those 7 roadways with bridges that at some point are going to be touched. Your unpaved roads, again, to be determined. We're not going to do them all at once. And then the safe streets, that's another thing to be determined, but there is a 20% local grant match on that. But right now, we already know that we do have a shortfall looking at next year if we were to choose to be proactive and come up with a pavement management plan. And regardless of whether or not we do that, you still have a shortfall on the FDOT 5-year work plan, unless you chose to scale it back or not do certain projects or made changes to that as it stands right now. You know, there is a cost to delaying maintenance. I think the question was asked about, you know, which ones do you do first? And fixing the worst roads first means rebuilding, and they're the highest cost. So if you don't have a pavement preservation, some sort of a maintenance schedule and plan, you're going to just be redoing roads. You're going to be having to do full reclamation of your roads because no money has been set aside to maintain them on an ongoing basis.
Heidi, on the 7 bridges that need replacement, do we have inspection reports on all of them?
When I say that there are 7, and I don't want to just get the disclaimer out here, I'm not saying that the 7 roadways that have bridges, that there's something wrong with the bridges. They receive inspections and they receive periodic maintenance, but nothing lasts forever. So at some point, they will need to be either replaced, repaired, whether it be for capacity issues, maybe it's just, you know, the condition, some of them are old. We don't have bridges that are in failure. I don't want the public to think that, you know, Heidi's saying that we've got, you know, 7 roads with bridges that are in immediate, you know, danger or something, because that's not the case. But it's just to put it out there that typically your bridges are very expensive. It's more than just a resurfacing project. And these are things that may or may not be on the radar of the board. So I just wanted to give you like eyes wide open. These are all the different challenges that we have, especially not just as Flagler County as it is today, but even moving forward, because we don't have a dedicated source of revenue for our roads. And as Faith alluded to, this started as a FDOT 5-year work plan adopted by the Board of County Commission as Flagler County's work plan, but yet no local funding dedicated source of revenue has been committed to it. And then it goes back to the strategic plan of making sure that we have the infrastructure and the assets to, you know, to continue to promote Flagler County through the transition and into the future. So it's, you know, just putting it on the radar. It's eyes wide open so that you see what I see, and I'm not keeping anything back. So,
How much are we getting each year in impact fees for roads?
we just started back with the impact fees. I'd have to look. I don't think it's much. I would probably look to our finance people, but it's not a lot. It was in our budget. I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but it's probably 500,000 or less, I would say.
So we're just banking that now, or are we going to use it?
Well, as you know, it's the way the impact fees work. It needs
new
to be
roads,
for new capacity, not ongoing maintenance.
Right.
So I'm not aware of anything that we're doing other than Commerce Parkway here, which adds capacity. And so I know we're pledging money towards that, but they're used in areas or districts. So like money that would be collected, say, over by the beach isn't used on the west side. They're contained within their respective area of where the money came. But like for a widening project, if you were, you know, widening a road for capacity, you could use that. I'm not aware of any projects other than Commerce right now that we have that qualifies for the impact fees.
So we could use it towards Commerce Parkway, whatever we have.
And we already have that pledged as part of the project, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So looking at, funding options for consideration, the two that I came up with that we could consider moving forward would be a dedicated millage. It's an ad valorem. It's tied to property taxes. If you were to look at the amount of money that would be needed next year for the gap in FACE projects that she's got scheduled with FDOT and actually starting a pavement management, pavement preservation program, you would need about 5.6 million, and that equates to about 4/10 of a mil. This is something, though, that would impact all property owners. But I realize that we do need to have a long-term strategy and a dedicated local funding source that enhances the county's roadway pavement management and performance, using a cost-effective set of practices that extends pavement life and improves the safety and meets the needs of the county citizens and motorists and what they come to expect. If you look at the other option, it is for a half-cent small county discretionary sales tax. When you look at the amount of money that would be realized, it would be $9.7 million countywide. Now, that money is collected at the state level, and it's given back to the county and the cities within that jurisdiction. But these funds would end up being used to pay for local authorized projects. I would suggest roadways, because this is something that we definitely have a need for, not just in unincorporated Flagler County, but also when you look at the growth that you're seeing in Palm Coast. I know they've got a shortfall in their project budget, about $10 million a year. I think they have allocated about $2.5 million annually towards their roads, and recent presentation that they gave to their council had it a deficit of about $10 million. So they need about like $12.5 million a year for the next several years to get their road inventory up to par. This would certainly go a long way with helping those challenges.
Is that money fenced? Can only be used for roads?
No, it's a discretionary sales tax. You can use it for whatever. I'm saying I would propose that it be used to help support infrastructure in our road network, because right now that is the biggest challenge. Back many years ago, the county put it out. They levied a half cent, and they used it to help with the cost of construction for the jail. And that's what, when they went out to do that, that's what it was decided it was going to be used for. So what I would recommend here is saying that we, Flagler County, are going to use it for our roads because we don't have a dedicated revenue source for that. When you look at recently, the school board had been successful in doing their half a cent. They use it for technology and some of the programs that runs through the school. Based on the research that they had done when they were launching their half-cent sales tax, the benefit is that everybody pays for it, including visitors and non-residents. So when they were looking at what that is, they determined that 40% of the funds collected are paid by non-residents, but 100% of those proceeds remain in Flagler. So it's money that comes back to this county, but 40% of it's being paid by visitors and non-residents. So to me, I think it's a more palatable thing than putting it on the property owners and increasing the millage rate. When you look at the cost of what that is, it costs a dime for every $20 of something that you've purchased. So it's 10 cents for every $20 purchase. But things that are exempt are, groceries, prescriptions, things like that. So if you look at what that half cent would cost a family of four with a median income of $56,000 or less, it's or $56,000, it would be less than $6 a month. That's what the impact would be. It would be less than $6 a month, and it would go back into the roads. According to the Office of Economic and Demographic Research, there's only one single county in the whole state of Florida that does not currently levy this surtax, and it's Flagler County. We levy a half a cent, but we're allowed to levy the full cent. We are the only county in the state of Florida that does not do that.
Mr. Chair, just point of clarification, the school board reauthorized their sales tax. This would be an additional half penny, so it's a little bit different consideration than reauthorizing something that was already on the books and being
Right.
paid.
This is a new tax.
So,
This would
I
be a
mean,
new tax.
I agree for the county, but the school board tax is already there. So we have a half cent for the, still that's on from the jail, building the jail, right? That's still on.
It still is.
And so then we have the school board tax, which is a half cent, and that's approved already. So this would be a half cent more for all residents of Flagler County.
This would be for
all
not just
users.
residents, anybody who purchased
Right,
anything in
that's
our
a sales
community.
tax, right, sales tax.
It is.
So
And-
it's 1.5% of taxes for the 3.5 cent tax.
When you look at the local, we don't, the school boards is, when I said that we're the only one who does not levy this.
No, I agree.
The school
I'm
boards
just
is
saying.
different. It is a half a cent.
Right.
But the county has the option to levy a full penny. We don't. We're the only county in the state of Florida who does not levy the full penny to come back to the county for infrastructure needs. So yes, this would be new. This would be in addition to what we already have, but the impact is still the same. So whether it was the re-promotion of the school boards, the impact is still the same. So it's a dime for every $20 spent. So when you look at the impact to a median income of $56,000, it's $6 a month is what that equates to.
Just one more follow-up on that, and that is that I think we tried to get some support from Palm Coast on this half-cent sales tax earlier this year or sometime in the not-too-distant future, and they were not willing to endorse it or anything. Is that true?
It wasn't this year. There was discussions last year when we talked about their road network. I've talked to their staff now, and I think that there is willingness, and they wanted to know if they needed to write a letter of support. They're looking at ways to stop the gap. They've got the deficit. It's not necessarily our issue, but this is one community, and many of us live in Palm Coast. One of the options that they are considering is adding a franchise fee onto FPL.
Right.
And when you look at it, the information that they had provided as part of the presentation showed that you could levy anywhere from 3 to 6%. That's 3 to 6% of your FPL bill. Well, I know what my FPL bill is. It's typically over $200, $250 a month. Well, if you're going to levy 3 to 6% on top of that, I'd rather have this, that 40% estimated, 40% non-residents are contributing. So now you're only really impacting, or that cost is really just being paid in at 60% of our residents. And it's on average, if it's, for an income of $56,000, it's only $6 a month. I think that this is probably going to be cheaper than the FPL.
I agree that the sales tax is a fairer tax. My problem is this, is that if we go for something like this is a big deal in the county, and as I say, even though I know it was a year and a half ago, or it seems time goes by pretty quick, it wasn't so much the staff was a problem at the Palm Coast, it was the elected members of the Palm Coast City Council.
Yeah, they don't want to drink antifreeze, or at least,
Right.
at least
That-
one of them.
I believe that was the phrase.
So I think that's the problem to me is one of, it's a publicity problem and a marketing problem. And I do think it would have to be, I would like to see, if we're going to go forward with this kind of an idea, that we have some support from Palm Coast, Flagler Beach, and Bunnell, since they're all getting advantages of the tax, not just.
Well, and you make a good point. Politically, they don't have any risk. We have the risk. And it requires a 4/5 vote, correct?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so,
It's all dependent on the language. There was not formalized language, as I remember, that was put forth prior. So it's dependent upon.
We hadn't even discussed it.
Right, it's dependent upon the language that's in the ballot referendum is what ultimately people will look at.
It's not a ballot referendum.
This is not a
it's vote
ballot
of the
referendum.
But
commission.
it can be a ballot referendum as well.
Well, good luck on that one.
I mean, it could be, if you're going to pledge it for debt, then it would have to be put out for referendum, but if it's not being pledged for debt, but it's, being utilized to support infrastructure, roadways, it could be approved by supermajority. When I look at this, the dedicated millage for the ad valorem property tax, that's probably not going to be doable. We've already set the millage rate for next year, so you cannot increase the millage rate. It would be only to decrease the millage rate. I just bring these to your attention as options. Certainly, we can explore other things, but it's important that we come up with a plan, and what does that plan look like? Not to complicate things, but if you were to levy this, I think, there could be a trade-off, whether you ended up foregoing the increase in the Daytona North front foot assessment. That could be a trade-off because you could say that you're going to offset some of the maintenance money to come out of this. You could further look to reduce a hair, maybe, of the ad valorem property tax as somewhat of a little bit of an offset. You can't really reduce it too much because even when you look at our amount of money that would come back to Flagler County, our portion is 4.4 is what we would stand to collect from this. And when you look at what's needed for the projects moving forward and doing some sort of a preservation maintenance, you're going to need about 5.6 million. So we would have to retool what we're doing as far as those two programs, but you might be able to do something there. I just throw that out there.
Procedurally, would we need an interlocal agreement with Palm Coast, Flagler Beach, and Bunnell about usage of the money before we vote on it here?
It's typically covered through an ordinance, but I'd have Sean talk about whether or not we need the interlocal.
You can do an interlocal, but Heidi is right. The ordinance itself spells out what the uses, they're allowed, and that would include within the municipalities. So we could write it as broadly or as narrowly as you wanted.
Right.
The formula for sharing the revenues is, there's a default formula in the statutes. You can also spell out an alternative formula in the interlocals.
Yeah, I understand the formula is pretty set, but it's the use of the money that we'd have to
That would be spelled out in the
have to
ordinance.
spell
Yeah,
out.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
Leanne?
Well, outside of this, one of the things I noticed in the list of roads and bridges that need to be done is the purpose that they serve as evacuation routes. A lot of them connect up to US 1 and state roads and 95. And I think outside of this, we should definitely attempt to package that together and see if there's an appetite to get those funded in the legislative, because there's a great, if you looked at what Governor DeSantis did fund when it came to roads, a lot of it tied into that hurricane evacuation route system. And a lot of these roads here have interconnectivity to other municipalities. They crawl out of on State Road 11, 95, and US 1. So I think that we should attempt maybe to package some of those together and look at if legislatively we can get those funded to help alleviate some of the projects off of here.
Hold that thought
Yeah,
till
right, to the legislature.
we're not ready to discuss that yet, so hold that. Dave?
Yeah, and just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, on what you said, we did, there mention possible letters of support. And rather than if you have to rewrite the ordinance or something like that, I'd rather see pretty upfront, if we're going down this road, letters of support from each of the other,
From the city.
yeah. I mean, I don't think we need anything more. That's good enough for me, if we could get letters of support from each of those organizations, not just from, it would have to be from their elected
Right.
officials.
Right.
Because if we don't have that, you don't have it. You don't have a decision. But I don't mean that. I'm just saying that's what you need to push anything like this through, because the publicity on this is not going to be easy to handle. So I somehow up front, some kind of support letters makes sense to me.
That pretty much completes the presentation on our roadway network. So I don't know, I guess if you're, as a board, providing direction for us to seek through their staff letters of support, if that's something that you all would like to see, I can certainly do that.
Yeah, let's do that. I think, is everybody in agreement that Heidi should go do that?
I'm in agreement.
Yep.
Just to see if they have an
Just see if
appetite.
anybody's going to balk. Yeah. Okay.
For a minute. I have one last question, Chair.
Sure,
Just really
Leanne.
quickly, for legal. I know when I first came here, Heidi, you and I spoke that there are a lot of roads that were once county roads, but pretty much everything is annexed in around them, but we still maintain them. Have we ever looked at a possibility of either relinquishing the road back to the municipality that has now owns, has annexed in all the land, or any type of cost share requirements for that municipality that continues to annex in land around roads we maintain? Have we thought about that or looked into that?
We actually have a lunch, I think it's this week, with the city managers. As you know, we meet on a regular basis. It is something that we needed to talk to the city of Bunnell about. The issue came up even more recently, last week, when we were meeting with the city of Palm Coast and the sheriff, and we were talking about law enforcement. So when you look at the county map and you look at the area that's annexed into Bunnell, but our law enforcement, the sheriff's office responds to those calls. So we were going to talk to them about a few things, not just the roads. We were going to talk to them about law enforcement as well, and what that looks like. I don't know, but
Yeah, because especially out in the west, there's so many property that is 100% annexed in around a county road, yet we continue to pay and maintain it. So I don't know if that's something, that could alleviate some of the projects here if the municipalities would take in what they annex.
I don't think that there's enough money for the roads, even in downtown Bunnell. Just my personal observation. If you,
Well, I understand that, but these municipalities are quick to jump and annex in, but then if there's no, financial impact to them, I guess they would, but to us, we continue to maintain something that they now collect a higher tax on. So just saying.
Commissioner Pennington, there's a state statute that we can't compel them to take ownership of those roads. They would have to be by agreement.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's a good thought, though. Okay, well, that completes the county roadway and funding gap discussion.
I missed a couple opportunities for questions, if I could.
Oh, sure, go.
Okay.
Shoot.
What is the annual budget of the gas tax? What do we receive?
I'd have to defer to finance. 2.5, is that what you're saying? 2.5 million.
Okay, so 2.5 million, which we didn't even discuss in the whole presentation about the needs. And also, somebody mentioned wear and tear of construction on the county roads due to development. I think there's an opportunity, or is there, to compel some roadway or maintenance of roadways as an impact to the roads that will be affected by construction?
I would probably defer to legal, but if anything, they probably would restore it to the condition they found it, not restore it to becoming a new road. I know the challenge or the issue that Ryan brought up was Roberts Road. It's an area that's an old road to begin with, and I think because it was in decent condition, what he was saying was that it's degraded a lot quicker because of all the construction activities. But I think that what you would be looking for is probably whatever the condition of the road was and maybe some diminished value, but it wouldn't be the full reclamation or repaving. But I would probably defer to Sean on that.
Right, well, the road schedule, right, doesn't take into account that type of impact. So even if we put together a road schedule, that type of heavy equipment's going to exacerbate. I mean, we're utilizing, I can't tell you how many trucks a day on Old Kings Road South going from the pit and going to the beach. But that's got to be degrading that road immensely every day. But we're not getting anything
I
out of
think
that.
we'd at least have to have an ordinance on the books in that regard. The Roberts Road situation, the developer did make some repairs to the damage that they were done that I'm aware of. It sounds like maybe there was something beyond that I'm not aware of. As long as they're within the weight limits that are established for these roads, then it would be considered ordinary wear and tear. But the county engineer may have better information than I do on that subject.
Faith Al-Khatib, I was looking at Adam. Aren't they supposed to be paying impact fee? And for these trucks using some of that sand traveling on public roadway, they pay gas tax.
Right, but the impact fee is for capacity, so that.
Capacity
Right.
and also the gas tax, and that's what comes to us to maintain the roadway. And there is an interlocal agreement between us and the city of Palm Coast in 2002, dividing the gas tax between us and between them based on 50% the miles and also 50% of the number of residents. So Flagler County, they're only collecting 20% of the gas tax annual. That's the distribution list for the gas tax. City of Palm Coast, they calculate or they get 70% of the gas tax.
Okay, interesting. And then, I mean, we've only talked about the supermajority. I mean, in my mind, the option is in the referendum, which requires us and the other municipalities to actually do have a piece of it in the pie. If I'm not mistaken, right, even though it's not for debt, we could still utilize it through the referendum?
Sean was going to look at it.
Commissioner Dance, I have the statute here, and for those who may be interested, this is 212.055, and it's subpart 3 that deals with the small county surtax. Sorry, just one moment as I scroll down. It's a big tax. It says that the levy of the surtax shall be pursuant to ordinance enacted by an extraordinary vote of the members of the county governing authority if the surtax revenues are expended for operating purposes. So that's what we're talking about, operations, maintenance, and it says it shall be by ordinance. The very next sentence says that if the surtax revenues are expended for the purposes of servicing bond indebtedness, then you go to it shall be by referendum. So that sounds to me like you have to do it by an ordinance with 4 of you agreeing to it if we were to use this for maintaining our roads. And if we were purchasing something through bonds, we would have to go to the voters.
So if you're not going into debt, your only option is through a supermajority.
That's my understanding. I'll confirm with you with a little more research,
Okay.
but just based on the plain black letter of the statute, it seems that that is our route.
And we really didn't talk, I mean, we've talked about the surtax, which is an option. The gas tax is also an option. There's availability in the gas tax.
When we looked at it, though, it doesn't generate enough. So to Faith's point, based on the population and based on the number of paved road miles in comparison, because that's where you're collecting this gas tax on, you're not generating enough. We get a small percentage. The lion's share goes to Palm Coast. We've seen over the last several years where it's diminishing because cars are more fuel efficient. You now have electric vehicles. So the amount that's being generated isn't enough.
Right, but I need all options for me to evaluate this. It's just another option that wasn't presented. So, I mean, I know now we've got 2.5 million per year that the county receives through gas tax. So a scale of increases would be beneficial as an alternate to look at.
We can certainly go through that exercise. I had brought it forward in, I think it was December or January at the beginning of the budget, where we looked at all of the different options, things that the county doesn't currently utilize. We did have gas tax discussion back then. I could pull that out and see how much that generates for this discussion.
And there was some discussion on, I know from the city of Palm Coast about how to be able to recoup some road taxes from electric vehicles. And I don't know if we've talked to them about that as well.
We have, I mean, at our level, staff level, not, with their elected officials, but at staff level, we have talked about it because the weight of electric vehicles are a lot heavier than your traditional gasoline vehicles. We believe that it's something that's going to have to be settled at the state level, that there will have to be some sort of funding, whether it's through annual vehicle registration or whatever that looks like, kind of like a fee based on the number of cars that are registered in your community that people would pay in. Kind of like if you think about vessel registration dollars, people who have boats and you pay your vessel registration, an amount comes back to us and it's used for boat facilities, things like that. This would be something that would have to be generated at the state level as part of legislature. Whether we add that to our legislative policy priorities for next year or not, that's certainly something we can consider.
And we're still in the early stages of analyzing what our requirements or needs will be for stormwater infrastructure based on the plan. So I'm thinking as a total entity, we should be looking at stormwater and roadway and how we're going to fund that.
I don't disagree with you. We've got two things coming up in front of you. The end of this month, you've got your stormwater plan, and then in August, you'll have the beach management plan. And both of those at some point in time are going to require dedicated funding to support both of those initiatives. What the immediate ask for to get this started was not addressing stormwater-related issues in the roadways. When you look at the pavement management piece for Public Works, it was strictly to maintain the roadways. It does not include, like when Faith has her capital projects and she's going after the state or federal funds, hers is all-encompassing of everything. So she's looking at stormwater and any other upgrades to that road network or system. The money required on the maintenance side was not addressing the stormwater. It was really just the surface itself. What do we need to put into applications for treatment of asphalt? What roads are at the critical point of needing to maybe have a mill and overlay before it continues to degrade, requiring a full reclamation? It's capturing that sweet spot, I guess, if you will, before it degrades so fast that now you're rebuilding a road. So the money or the 5-year plan that Public Works came up with was just to address those. It's not inclusive of stormwater. So whatever you decide out of the stormwater discussion would be in addition to whatever you're looking to do here.
Right, but from an overall global view of deficiencies and what we need to accomplish, I think it's helpful to look at now that we've paid to have the stormwater plan done and we've done the asphalt paving analysis to be able to look at that. I think we have to look at all of our funding needs.
I don't disagree. I just think the timing of when these things were available to come back to you, it didn't all align where we could have maybe one meeting, but we can certainly, figure that out after you see the stormwater presentation and what's required there.
And then the only other comment I had was on the FDOT 5-year plan. There were capacity projects on that plan. So my thinking is those probably should be pulled because they're impact fee eligible. And that might have us look at a couple of different lists, one that is a ranking for impact fee eligible projects versus those that aren't, that are maintenance and rehab.
And I don't know if you have certain roadways that come to mind. I wasn't aware of any that were
It was,
impact
I mean, the
related.
one popped out at me on the list, but that was, I don't know, I can't, until if we pulled it back up, I
I
could
mean, I
show
can
you,
pull up
but
the list again. Was it on the current 5-year, or was it on the list of 12? You have the list of 12. These are not programmed yet.
okay. Well, the
Then
one that
this
stood
one.
out was the 4-laning, so anything that was an expansion is what stood out for me. So these, yes, it wasn't part of what was funded, but it was part of this list.
Yeah, so those are way out there, Colbert Lane and Old Kings Road South. Yeah,
We
they're up
only
there.
have $500,000.
I understand, I'm just saying these could be separated into impact fee versus non-impact fee.
Okay, Faith Al-Khatib, if you want to create two different lists, that's fine, but our goal here, having one list to make sure it is in the comprehensive plan and it's available to Flagler County. If there is any funding available out there, any grant funding, it should not be only FDOT, any grant funding, they have the ability to go in and apply for these kind of projects. So that was the benefit of having this list, including widening,
Okay.
I think Old Kings Road and maybe other roadway in Flagler County. It might not happen now. It depends on the growth, how soon it will happen. Commissioner, he mentioned maybe we're going to be having development. They might come in and do that. So it's on our priority list to make sure the board agreed on that and it to give us the ability to apply for any grants.
Okay, thank you. That's all, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners, or comments? If
If I,
not,
if I could,
Yes, ma'am.
the question was raised about the gas tax. Jorge was able to find the slide from when we did the presentation back in December. I think it was December or January. We were going to put it up on the screen. It's the portion of gas tax that's eligible to the county that we don't currently collect. This is your local option fuel tax. We don't currently levy for this. When you look at what it would have been in 2022 countywide, it would have been $2 million. Our portion is only $413,000. Again, the lion's share goes to Palm Coast, so
The 2 million is not our funds, just the $400,000 to $500,000 probably.
out of this would be, so like when you have gas tax, you have different taxes that make up the gas tax combined. We may receive right now the 2.5 million, but it could be a combination of 4 or 5 different gas taxes together. What's available that you can levy that's left that we don't levy is this one. This is the only one that we don't levy. And so when we looked at these funding opportunities of what things are we not currently doing, or maybe we're doing it, but we're not maximizing it out at 100%, this is the only thing that we came up with as far as gas tax. But based on the comments that I had received from the board and at that time from the community when they were, I don't want to say complaining, but you know, talking about why is gas so much more in Flagler County, and everybody thought it was because our gas tax is so much. Our gas tax isn't so much. The problem is, you know, where does the fuel come from? And I think a lot of it has to do with distribution and how far is the refinery or these, you know, distribution points. It probably has a lot to do with supply and demand. If you're a, you know, a big purchaser of fuel, you probably get it at a savings compared to other communities. But we actually sent a letter to, if you recall, the board had authorized us to send a letter to Department of Ag, I think is who we sent it to, asking him, why is our fuel so much in Flagler? And they reported back, your fuel's not so much compared to other counties. And here, these are the reasons why the fuel prices, you know, are what they are. And a lot of it had to do with where the fuel was coming from and proximity to Flagler. And there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And that's why I didn't recommend it today, because of that sensitivity and because it's not going to generate enough for the need of what we have.
Well, first, Jorge, you're amazing. That's pretty awesome to be able to pull that up so quickly for us to look at. But again, just as an overall look at our options is I want a wholesale look at all the different things we get to look at in this funding gap. How do we address the funding gap?
Anything else, commissioners? If not, we'll move to the legislative priorities discussion.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Holly Albanese, Chief of Special Projects. I'm going to go over with you today our suggested legislative policy priorities and funding priorities. And I've asked various people to be here today in support in case they are the experts. And in case I can't answer any questions, they're here to respond to any questions you might have. So first, I wanted to update you with the session dates, and just to give you an idea, I expect our delegation meeting, as we talked about the last time, that this was a very short window to get all this done. I do expect our delegation meeting will be sometime between the first week in October to potentially the first week in November. There is no election this year, so I don't think they'll be waiting until after that. So. And the session actually begins January 9th, and the actual legislative day is January 17th. The session will end March 8th of 2024. So we're going to go over the policy priorities first. I have taken out a couple of the policy priorities from last year that one of which was the library construction, because we did receive that grant, so it no longer needs to be a request in there. And then the drones, because we know that the bill failed on the drones, so we didn't put that forward. And for the drones, they have to meet that this year anyways. We still obviously want to ask the legislature to protect and increase the funding for transportation disadvantage, continue to support affordable housing programs, even though that great Live Local Act passed this year, affordable and reliable high-speed internet, and the state has been giving money for the last couple of years to this. And this year, I believe, was the first year that we received funding. The state put out funding for cybersecurity, so we're looking to ask for a continued support on that. We'd like to see an increase to the support of the Scrap and Scop grant programs to assist for the roads for small counties. And I know you talked a little bit about that today, but maybe if more funding was put forward, we'd have more money to put towards these roads. We'd also like to see more money put into community resiliency grant programs for wastewater, water quality, beach renourishment, flood and sea level rise mitigation, and septic to sewer conversion projects. There have been grants in these areas, and hopefully they'll continue to do that. And then, of course, our two big ones that we put on every year is maintain short-term vacation rental legislation, status quo, and advocate for home rule authority. We talked about the short-term vacation rental. I do really feel as though they came very close this year to passing something, and they've been trying for the last several years. I think there is a good chance that something will pass this year. It would be good for us to work with our local legislators to see if we can't come up with some verbiage that might still support us in what we're doing. So those are the suggested policy priorities. I don't expect any approvals today of these. What I'm looking for at the end of all of this, and if you need to ask questions, please stop me as we go. But if you, what I'm looking for is direction at the end. If there's anything you want me to remove, if you have any suggested policy priorities or even funding requests that you'd like me to add, I'd be glad to add them. I will come back at a later date with the fully written up program and ask for approval at that time of our program. So we're going to go into the funding priorities. Okay, we have 7 priorities right now. And I'm going to go over each one of these individually. So you don't need to look at the list so much, but I'm going to go over each one individually. So the first one is to create a cohesive venue for educational and entertaining experiences within the conservation corridor. These properties are, that you see in the map are on the north side of the county and represents a critical link for an existing conservation corridor along Pelisair Creek, which is an outstanding Florida water. The one in the red, that land is what we're looking at because it connects the east and the west side, and it would create that link. It's a unique opportunity to complete that almost 7-mile link of publicly owned conservation land along Pelisair Creek eastward from the coastline at the Flagler County Managed River to Sea Preserve to approximately 1.5 miles west of I-95. This link will not only provide a great opportunity for ecotourism on both sides of US 1, and eventually we hope to connect both sides of US 1 with a pedestrian bridge along Old Kings Road from the wildlife and pedestrian. We also have that Old Kings Road wildlife and pedestrian bridge overpass that crosses I-95 to County-owned Princess Place Preserve. This location will provide potential to work with state agencies, such as Division of State Lands, Florida State Parks, and others, and also University of Florida's various research arms on public outreach, education, and research needed on issues of water quality, habitat management, water supply conservation, and other pursuits. This site could become a regionally significant site attraction and economic driver for tourism, including demonstrations of past, present, and future of farming, but also educational partnerships in an ecotourism site, creating a nature hotspot within Flagler County that include hiking, biking, birding, kayaking, and horseback riding. We also would like to co-locate the Flagler County UF-IFAS Extension Office on these lands. That would extend the educational benefits of the scientific side of agriculture and natural resources and provide a platform to engage with the local communities, schools, and visitors, raising awareness about the importance of conservation and promoting sustainable practices. The final piece would be to relocate activities of the fairgrounds to provide another economic driver to help with operations, and this would create an educational forum for agriculture youth and family activities. So in summary, we would need to do site planning, stormwater utilities, move buildings, build new buildings, build something for UF-IFAS, co-locate ecotourism, agribusiness, fairgrounds to create that cohesive venue of educational and entertaining experience that we referred to, build a covered arena, and build in the future, I don't necessarily know if that would be part of this project, but build a pedestrian bridge to connect the conservation corridor and activities on both the east side and west side of US 1. And the requested funding for this particular project is $20 million. So basically what we're asking them to do, the requested action, is to provide the funding so we can create this cohesive venue, and the effect is that this project would connect the conservation corridor, provide a venue for ecotourism and other educational activities, and become an economic driver and educational forum for agriculture, youth, and families. So our next legislative priority that we're looking at is improvements to recreation fields and fairgrounds with an emphasis on emergency preparedness. So currently, this is the fairgrounds that we currently have. And currently, Flagler County has a deficit of special needs shelter spaces as determined by the most recent Florida statewide emergency plan. The deficit is determined by the number of approved and usable special needs shelter spaces as compared to the expected demands for space. As Flagler County continues to grow, a significant portion of that growth is senior citizens. Seniors, as we know, their households are more likely to need these special medical needs sheltering than other segments of the population. So we also have a problem with lack of non-school facilities that can also serve as shelters for any type of emergency or disaster. So the community centers, which are currently the only non-local, non-school facilities, are generally small, limited capabilities, and not built to today's building codes. The Flagler County Fairgrounds has the potential to serve the perfect disaster resource and recovery site, not just for Flagler County, but we could also support our neighboring counties as well. So what we're looking to do is construct a multi-purpose facility that can serve as our primary special medical needs shelter for hurricanes and a consolidated shelter for both post-hurricane and non-hurricane evacuations. Improve on-site drainage and provide a hardened, elevated parking surface and ingress-egress route to and from the entrance roadway. The great thing about this is when it's not being used as a shelter, the facility would be great replacement for Cattleman's Hall and its adjacent structures that would allow year-round events, so it could become a de facto community center. And then, of course, there is the potential with doing all of this to add to and improve the fields for sports activities, which is greatly needed. So the request is to provide the funding so we can improve the fields, relocate all activities, and create this special needs shelter. The effect is that the project would create a dedicated special needs shelter and allow us to reduce that deficit as defined by the state. The site will also act as a disaster resource site for the county and can be used to support our neighboring counties as well. So the next funding request, oh, and I don't know if I mentioned that we were looking for $10 million to do all of that. In case I forgot to say that. Okay, our next one is to construct a new visitor eco-discovery center. In 2019, the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners approved and adopted the county's tourism strategic plan. Part of this strategic plan included this Eco-Discovery Center, which will act as the main hub in Flagler County to protect, conserve, and enhance the recreational, natural, historic, and cultural resources. They're looking for 10,000 square feet to be located on 22 acres of county-owned land, which is on SR 100. It's in close proximity to the new pedestrian bridge. It's also on the Heritage Crossroads Byway and approximately 1 mile east of I-95 and 3 miles west of A1A Scenic and Historic Coastal Byway in Flagler Beach. And I mentioned that it was close to the pedestrian bridge and adjacent to the future Bulow Creek Headwaters Regional Park. It's my understanding, I believe, that engineering has $1.5 million towards design of this particular park and trails. So these trails would serve as a gateway for the already 135 miles of trails in Flagler County. The bridge, the pedestrian bridge, connects to the Lehigh Greenway Trail and eventually will connect to the Bulow Trail, which I think a lot of people are confused as to where that pedestrian bridge is going to lead to, because there really is nothing at this point. But that is the plan, is to have that connect into this Bulow Trail and park area, and the connectivity or the connection of this Eco-Discovery Center in relation to Bulow Park and the pedestrian bridge is situated in a way that makes it convenient for all of this to connect in. So the design and plan, what I gather they're in the design and planning phases for Bulow Creek Headwaters Regional Park. So this 1,000-acre park is a critical part of the larger Palm Coast to Bulow corridor that includes Graham Swamp Preserve, Bulow Creek, and Tomoka conservation areas. This regional greenway is of statewide significance, as identified within the Florida Greenways and Trails System Opportunity Map, and the conservation area is large enough and well-connected enough to provide significant environmental benefits to the region. So briefly, I wanted to say on this particular one, looking at it, it's, they also, tourism has, or is going to apply for the National Scenic Byway Funds. So, and I also understand that they also have about $3 million of their own funds to go towards this project. So really, the project is about $12.3 million. And my understanding, after talking to Amy Lukasik, who's the Director of Tourism, that if they were to get this grant, and there is no guarantees on the grant, that historically the grant has not provided huge amounts of money, so they're thinking maybe about $1 million is what they would receive for that particular grant. So that's why we're looking at a funding request of $8 million. So they would like the delta between the grant and their money and what the total cost is to construct this. But if you need any other information, Amy has provided me with a superfluous amount of information on what this project would look like and essentially what would the activities that they would be undertaking, how they would enhance the visitor experience, creation of new revenue streams. It would strengthen local and regional partnerships, increase economic activity along the byway, will further enhance the byway. And so there's a lot of other information here that I can provide to you if you need that. But they are looking for $8 million. And the picture you see up there is a rendering of what that building would look like. They also do have a floor plan. So if we move to sending this to the legislature as a funding request, we would provide all those backup details. You're not seeing every last piece of information on some of these items. A lot of this will be provided, though, to the legislature for their review. So essentially, we're asking them to provide funding assistance to construct this Eco-Discovery Center to support the goals, objectives, and priorities. And then the effect of this Eco-Discovery Center is it will be a main hub in Flagler County to protect, conserve, and enhance the recreational, natural, historical, and cultural resources. So the next one is the to construct ability to expand access to public health and social service providers through a public-private partnership. So this is another one of those public-private partnerships that we've talked about in the past. And basically, it's with the Department of Health, which has, as you're aware, because I know the current director, Bob Snyder, has been in front of you and has talked about their outgrowing their facility and the deficit that they have right now. And in the last 10 years, they've added a lot of services and increased their services. Right now, I guess the indication is in 2022, they've provided 156,000 services to 35,000 residents, of which 78% come from the city of Palm Coast, which is why we are looking for a facility within the city of Palm Coast, since 78% of the users are in that location. So they would like to collaborate and co-locate and create a public-private partnership with Flagler Cares and the Flagler County Village entities to promote something they call the no wrong door approach to care. So no matter where you are in that facility, you would not find a wrong door. Whatever you need, they would be able to handle your requests and needs. Some of the current entities that are at Flagler County Villages includes Easter Seals of Northeast Central Florida, Early Learning Coalition, Healthy Start, The House Next Door, Epic Behavioral Health Care, Outreach Community Care Network, Flagler Open Arms Recovery Services, and there are others. So the health department is closely aligned with Flagler Cares and each of the entities identified above. They do refer patients on continual basis to these entities. So being in the same building obviously would be extremely convenient for the user. So what they're looking to do is, again, build a building that would house both the health department and this social service Flagler County Village and all their entities, centrally located in the city of Palm Coast, where organizations share a commitment to creating access for vulnerable residents and coexist for ease of referrals and accessing health. So again, centrally located, walk-in hours. They would have staff support no matter what the issue was. It creates a collaborative environment, and it's an affordable solution for all the organizations that are participating. It's more affordable for them to share in the spaces than to have to rent or find their own space. The health department is looking for 12,500 square feet. And the Flagler Care and villages and all their entities need about 16,100 square feet. So they're looking for a total of 28,600 square feet. And we estimate the cost, based on today's cost of construction, at $20 million. And again, Bob Snyder, Carrie Baird, they're here today should you have any questions and need further details about this project.
You want the questions now?
Anytime.
Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Don.
Thanks. Well, for Mr. Snyder, I wanted to know, would he foresee delivery of all services out of that location, or would we stratify things or segregate them out based on, what we do here in Bunnell?
Bob Snyder, Administrator of the Health Department, excuse me. The population has grown so much, and we've added so many new services to the community that we would need both locations. We're so crammed of space in the 33-year-old Bunnell facility. And what we would do is the patient origin analysis indicated to us what services that are being used primarily from Palm Coast residents. Again, 78% of total patients emanate from a zip code there. So the idea would be to relocate to Palm Coast our WIC program, that is one of the busiest in the state, and to relocate all of our nursing clinical services. So that would include prenatal, women's health care, our HIV program, and we'd like to start primary care services again. About 10 years ago, we stopped, but I think now that we were asked to stop from Tallahassee. But there is such a great need for primary care services for Medicaid patients, our HIV patients, our behavioral health patients. They are sometimes left out and not being able to find primary care services because there also is a huge shortage of PCPs in our community, and that's well documented. So we would like to get that going again for Palm Coast and Flagler County. So WIC and all of our nursing clinical services in Bunnell, as we vacated space there, it would just open up and provide more space for getting vital stats, business and finance, accounting, environmental health, dental, the dental expansion. Thank you, Heidi and team. It's going great. So we would keep dental in Bunnell as well. And a couple of other services like the diabetes program and corollary services. So we've just grown so much, we need both locations. And it's not uncommon for health departments of our size to have two different locations in their county.
So Bob, when you talk about the clinical side of it, would that include diabetes, the diabetes programs, education, and?
Yeah, it would include all the clinical diabetes, exactly.
Okay, yes.
So you're going to replace what
Commissioner.
the free clinic does?
No, we're going to complement what the free clinic does. This is needed, it'd be the Medicaid population, though, that we would primarily provide primary care services for.
Since we don't have a fixed route bus system, the location of these services in Palm Coast is critical, in my mind. And it's just becoming more and more acute each year. So
And what's so wonderful about this project, and by the way, Barbara Rebels is with us today. Barbara's been a founding board member of Flagler Cares, and she's been instrumental in helping to coordinate meetings between the city of Palm Coast, Heidi and Jorge and all of us. This is like a combined effort by four main groups of individuals and entities, I should say. She's done a great job in helping us envision and put together a floor plan, react to our space plan, and also do some cost estimating. And then, of course, Carrie Baird is here, CEO of Flagler Cares. And Carrie, we've already seen what she's been able to do with this village concept at City Marketplace in Palm Coast. It's been a place where Flagler Cares is co-located with so many of these organizations, and from a linkage of care, case management, and ease of referral process, having all these entities that are like-minded, where patients use 3 or 4 different services from 3 or 4 different entities and have everyone gathered all in the same space is going to benefit not only the providers, but benefit thousands of residents in our community from a health and social service standpoint. So, and it's been successful. The village concept started about 2 years ago, and with great, great success.
Where do you envision this, town center?
Well, Heidi has some ideas, so I'm going to pass the baton to her.
We've been looking at county-owned property and also talking to the city to see if there's any public lands that we could place this in Palm Coast. We did not talk about putting it in town center.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Hey, Commissioners, Holly Albanese, Chief of Special Projects again. So essentially, the request is to provide funding assistance to construct a true one-stop shop solution for health and social service care in Flagler County. And the outcome would be that we'd be able to provide wraparound and expanded services for the residents of Flagler County with a public-private partnership approach. Next one, construct a new general aviation terminal, and I should mention Roy Seeger, our airport director, is in the room, should you have any questions as well. So the Flagler Executive Airport is one of the busiest general aviation airports in the state of Florida, and continues to experience a significant increase in the number, size, and type of aircraft operations. Growth has led to the need for new general aviation terminal to replace the existing 3,200 square foot, 30-year-old structure located in a lean-to an existing hangar building. The new 15,000 square foot terminal will accommodate airport administrative offices, airport operated FBO and other facilities, public space, meeting space, and room for additional small tenants. This will improve customer service, provide better public access, and an overall safer operating environment for the public and support local businesses. The overall expansion to the terminal is expected to improve efficiency, meet ADA requirements, and provide users with more amenities and options. The project will enhance safety and will be a more centralized location between the landside and airside areas, and increase capacity to support aeronautical demands now and into the future. I know that Roy has mentioned that he's tried to get funding from FAA for the past couple of years and has been unsuccessful, unfortunately. And it has been on the FDOT list, but my understanding is that it is still several years out. And so he would like to have this on the legislative funding request, and the needed funding to complete this terminal is $10 million, and the picture you see there is a rendering of the terminal building. So essentially, the requested action is to provide funding assistance to help construct the general aviation terminal. And by doing this, the outcome will be the increased capacity. It'll replace the aging infrastructure, achieve compliance with the ADA, improve access for the historically disadvantaged populations, improve airport safety and energy efficiency, and create high-value, high-wage jobs. Okay, this particular priority from the last time I was in front of you has been added. It was at the request of Commissioner Sullivan. And I think this is based on a meeting that was held in the city of Flagler Beach about their congestion and traffic issues. And so he would like to have us put it forward a legislative request for a study and design for safety improvements or potential safety improvements to the intersection on the east side of the Hammock Dunes Bridge on the Barrier Island. So currently you have two access points. You have the State Road Bridge on Route 100 Bridge, and then you have the Hammock Dunes Bridge. But the Hammock Dunes Bridge is a toll bridge, and it leads to the Hammock Dunes private community directly. And it's a difficult intersection to traverse, and most people, when they're accessing the beach, they usually use the Route 100 Bridge. So, over the last 20 years, while the population has grown from 50,000 to almost 130,000, and tourism has increased to over 1 million, little has been done to alleviate this congestion. And the situation just grows as the population continues to grow. So while another bridge in the northern part of the county would be a solution, it's unlikely to happen anytime in the foreseeable future. So as a result, we're looking to put in a request for a study and design for any safety improvements to that intersection. And of course, it would be great, that second piece of this, which would, I think, significantly decrease that congestion to City of Flagler Beach, would be to remove the toll if feasible, but we know that that bridge and that area is a privately owned bridge, so what I don't think there's any likelihood that that toll could be removed, but it would be nice because it would give us a second free access to A1A in the beaches. And it would decrease the amount of traffic going directly in through Route 100 over that Route 100 bridge into the city of city of Flagler Beach, which is increasing. It has become a mecca for tourism. So that is that request. If you have any questions.
Well, this is a good idea, but
Yes, sir.
asking for $5 million when the CDD for the bridge has got that much money in their pocket.
Right,
I don't think we need to ask for money for this. We need to ask them to do it and
Well-
spend their own money, which is designed. They've got the money to do this.
Yeah, the 5 million is just I wrote this up pretty quickly since the last meeting, but I do think that it's the only other bridge we're going to have across the Intercoastal Waterway in the foreseeable future. They're not going to build another bridge from across the Intercoastal Waterway. So this bridge exists, and maybe we can take some better advantage of it. That was the thing coming out of that meeting we had, was access to the beaches. We have 6 beaches north of Flagler Beach that the county has put in, and they're not, most people just go to Flagler Beach because that's where the bridge is, and this would be an idea to spread the traffic out. I don't know the answer, but if we don't start some kind of attempt to look at this, and you may be right as far as the funding, I don't know, but there are a lot of possibilities there, including a right-hand turn coming off the bridge, which would cost a lot of money, and or a rotary in there, roundabout. There's all kinds of things.
Well, they're studying it now.
Yeah, I know.
They're studying it.
So I just want to support that and see where we can go with this. I don't know exactly, the funding has not been worked out, obviously.
Well,
But
my point is, it's a private bridge. they've got all the money in the world and they're studying it right now. They're trying to figure out what to do at that
Yeah,
intersection.
right.
And they've looked at a roundabout
But we
and
should,
they say
I think
there's
we
not
should
enough
support
land.
that. I think ultimately FDOT will have to get involved one way or another. We'll see, we'll see. But my idea is, when we had that meeting over in Flagler Beach, they're looking for some way to improve the situation. And the thought of the fact that there's only one free access over to the beach, and what are the possibilities? And this could be a way to improve the situation. And I think it needs to be fleshed out. I mean, this is just, based on that meeting. But I do think that we've got to spread the traffic out for safety and, it's a hurricane evacuation route, that kind of thing. But anyway, that's the thought.
Yeah, I think rather than ask for money, I think maybe we should schedule a meeting with the CDD, Bridge CDD, and discuss some of this stuff.
Right.
As one government official to other government official. Have them come over
Yeah.
here. Because, like I said, they've got a pretty good sized budget. And they're looking at it right now, so why don't we have?
Well, that's one of the
why don't we
reasons to
talk
do this.
them and have them come tell us what the plans are, and can we help? Maybe that's the road to take. I don't think this is the road to take.
Okay, no, but my feeling was we should at least try to do something to support the meeting we had and with all the players there, trying to feel like there's got to be some help coming for the future for Flagler Beach.
I don't know, this looks like a throwaway. I mean, we put it on our request and.
What I would say, Commissioners, is we have such a compressed time this year that and I agree that maybe we should get together with the CDD and see if there is something that we could put together that maybe becomes a legislative priority for next year. Maybe we're not ready this year to do that, but that will be your call. Essentially, we were asking for them to provide funding for a study and design for safety improvements, and the idea was to ease the congestion into the city of Flagler Beach. All right, so the last one that I have, and I'll talk about another project after I go through this one, but basically this one is to support acquisition of conservation lands to create a floodplain corridor which would protect drinking water quality, wildlife habitats, and nearby communities. So Flagler County recognizes the value of acquiring wildlife corridors, having secured several substantial corridors working with the state and water management district. The Pellicer Creek corridor stretches over 6 miles and borders the upland corridor of an outstanding Florida water, Pellicer Creek, and extends to the ocean. This corridor is one of two anchors for the Northeast Estuarine Research Reserves. The county also has assembled a variety of properties in its Flagler County Coastal Greenway stretching some 18 miles, and appropriation of more lands would add to this. So what we're looking for is to purchase land along some groundwater recharge areas and surface water discharge areas along some of the primary tributaries to Haw Creek and feeder water creeks which feed into Crescent Lake. Crescent Lake is fed primarily by Haw Creek, which receives discharge from several smaller creeks, including Little Haw Creek and Middle Haw Creek. Crescent Lake flows through Dunn's Creek to the St. Johns River. The Middle Haw Creek flows into the northwest from the southern reaches of the county into Haw Creek and west into Dead Lake and beyond. Little Haw Creek flows north from Lake Diston into Haw Creek and Dead Lake. Both systems function as discharge for surface water, which ultimately flows into Crescent Lake and the St. Johns River and lie within the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So, locally referred to as floodplain corridors, these connected properties shown in the attached map represent, they're in yellow, represent opportunities to conserve water quality and protect habitat for sensitive plants and for animals dependent on these habitats, including the black bear. So, The majority focus of our program will go towards identifying sellers, negotiating for acquisition and properties that will meet these goals throughout our county, and the primary focus will go towards properties that lie within the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Essentially, a floodplain corridor, the benefits of one is fish and wildlife habitat, natural flood and erosion control, water quality, groundwater recharge, fertile soils, flatlands for farming, and more recreational opportunities. So we know that our legislative delegation has been extremely supportive of purchasing lands and acquiring lands within the wildlife corridor, and so we'd like to put forward this project as well, and we would need about $10 million to do that. Mike Lagacy is here should you have any questions, more technical than I can possibly explain. And so essentially the requested action is to provide local levels of funding to acquire tracts of land so we can create the floodplain on the west side of Flagler County. And again, by creating that natural floodplain, we will provide flood risk reduction benefits by slowing runoff, storing flood water. We'll also provide other benefits of a considerable economic, social, and environmental value, which includes all the things that I had talked about with the habitats, erosion, surface water quality, groundwater recharge, and recreational opportunities. Now, before we get to the questions and feedback, there was one other project that was brought to me midweek last week. It was from our county engineer, Faith Al-Khatib. She was talking about wanting to put forward a legislative priority for 4 bridges on County Road 304. I do not have the details, which is why you don't see it in your packet at this point. Today was the first time I heard that it would cost somewhere between $15 and $20 million to replace those bridges. So if it is something that you're amenable to, I will be glad to include it in our final packet when we come forward with that. But that's all I have at this point. Questions and feedback at this point. What I'm looking for is not necessarily approval on these items at this time, but rather anything you want removed, anything you have that you want added, and any modifications that you might request. Now would be the time to tell me.
Commissioners?
And I'm going to have to leave, but I don't want to remove mine, but you may remove that.
He's what,
But I
he's
do
the
think
bad
we
cop,
need to-
right? He's the bad cop.
I think we do need to, I think we do need to pursue the idea of trying to improve access of the population to the barrier island and the other facilities out there, because there is a concern on the part of the city of Flagler Beach that they're being overwhelmed with people and cars and so on. And they've got a number of projects coming up in the near future that's going to make it even more difficult. So I think we ought to think about it. Maybe it's just a study or something else, but if we don't do something, it'll just kind of sit there and nothing will happen.
Yeah, I really think that that's something we should discuss with the CDD manager, have him come and
Yeah.
give us a presentation of what his plans are.
Yeah.
Because they know they've got to fix that intersection, and they're studying it right now, and they've got the money
But
to
it
do
may,
it.
well, do they have, I mean, fixing intersections is not cheap, as we've seen. Roundabouts and things like that are costly. So it may be that we still have a need to ask for some support from the state and in the way of FDOT or something like that. I don't know. I just think it's worth keeping it. Let's see where we go with that a little bit. I got to go.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I just think on that item, it's going to incorporate DOT. We've had different various safety studies along A1A in that corridor, and anybody who's driven over that bridge, the traffic backs up all the way across the bridge. So
Yeah, sometimes it
some type
does,
of
all the way.
alleviating of that congestion is going to warrant some type of traffic or safety study,
Yeah.
really up and down that corridor. I think from Bing's all the way down there.
Yeah, FDOT is already looking at where Camino Real comes into A1A, doing a roundabout there. And that will help, but it's not going to help that intersection where they're coming off the bridge. And I don't know what the answer is, but they're looking at adding the turn lane for right turns coming off the bridge, but that's not going to, I don't think, significantly help it.
I'll go quickly. so
Okay,
for
go
you guys.
ahead.
So in terms of projects, so I think absolutely looking at what the Senate and House did last year, anything with hurricane evacuation. We know that the Senate president just gave out a call to fully fund the wildlife corridor if they can get it done. I think public health is a priority, and I think stormwater, which we haven't really been able to look at and see what we need for there. As to our road issues, there's a lot of projects that have, Old Kings is a good example of it, that have almost double as evacuation routes because it runs up against 95. And I think that maybe the staff could take some of those roads that have interconnectivity that are along state road projects, US 1 type projects, and the evacuation route areas, and maybe package them and look at an ask out of that. And I think, I noticed a lot of those roads got funded by the governor in the last haul in projects because they're, especially Old Kings, it runs, people have to get off 95. It's so things that have to do with evacuation routes. So as for the airport, it's already on FDOT list, and the tourism center, I'm not sure. It's a necessity. I'm kind of worried that we're really up against, it's a lot of ask we have on there. And I don't want all of our very important projects to get lost in the of the great amount. So I think hurricane evacuation, wildlife corridor, stormwater, public health, and roads that serve, evacuation should be added to that. And certainly the bridges, because I just heard someone from the state talk about there's some concerns that people are starting to get like stranded in certain areas, cut off by bridges and when they have water issues. So I just don't know about the airport and tourism, and to the point, your point, the hammock at this time.
So just a point of clarification for Commissioner Pennington, I think that's if there's a true nexus there between evacuation need and the roadways, I'm all for looking at that further. But I wanted to just get clarification from you. Were you in thinking that the ask would be centered around repair and resurfacing of the roads, or the 3 or 4 bridges, or both?
I actually think it might be around both. One was the widening of Old Kings, the 4-lane, and you can make a good argument that that's an evacuation.
I wasn't promoting that.
Oh, no, that's right. But some of the repairs there, but the bridges as well. But there were like a couple of projects, I think, that you can make an argument that the roads need to be paved and repaired because they double as evacuation and/or are connectivity for state roads, within State Road US 1. I think they could probably pull them out. I saw them in there, but I think you can make a really good argument that those need to be done for that. So,
And I think you're smart in suggesting that is based on what has happened the last year or so on the legislative side, that is still and will continue to be a priority for them. So that will sell well, if you will. And for me, they're all worthwhile projects. I think I share your skepticism on the Hammock Dunes Bridge intersection and all that at this point.
Right.
It is definitely an issue, but in terms of legislative asks, that's probably not the highest priority for us at this point. For me, it's well past time that we need to do a better job of delivering public health services in Palm Coast
Right.
and all that around that. So I just think that needs to be a very high priority for us.
Yeah, I think of all of them, that's like number one. I mean, that's really, really important to get that done. Yeah, I kind of agree that I'd like to see something put together that kind of combines what Leanne's talking about, that, kind of a package deal.
We can certainly do that.
That kind of makes evacuation better, smoother. I think that's of some value, I think.
We can certainly do that. I just caution you, based on my conversation with FDOT, that typically transportation projects, you're competing from the same bucket of money that they get annually. So I think you just have to be mindful of where are those projects on our 5-year plan. So if they're at the bottom of the list, chances are you may not get some of the higher priority needs. The issue came up when we asked for the legislative appropriation for commerce. That was my first introduction to District 5 when they said it really throws their plans out of whack when the state goes in and does something like that. I just say that out of caution, that I just think we need to be mindful depending on what the buckets of money are. And I don't know if I would necessarily remove anything. There might be a different priority order. But typically, we end up putting through as many requests and trying to find a nexus with the state. Even though it might not be our number one top priority, it's still a priority. And then let the legislature, let our local delegation decide who can they get to support it. So I don't know if I would cut anything off the list, maybe the Hammock Dunes Bridge, and I certainly can work with Greg Pugh to have him come in. They are doing a study. He did talk to me about the possibility of maybe needing to come back to the county to acquire some of our property to make those necessary traffic improvements there. I can certainly have him come back, but that would probably be the only one I would look to eliminate. It's more of a priority order, and maybe if you added anything.
Yeah, I think the bridge issue is one that we can solve locally. We don't need to go to ask for any money for that. I think we own the land, he's got the money, they're already looking at it, they're already paying to look at it, so, yeah, I think, I hope with the consensus here that let's just start and take that one off the plate and concentrate on some others. And I would defer to Faith on, your point's well taken. We don't want to step on FDOT's toes by coming up with something that's going to screw up their plan. So I think it's a good idea, Leanne, but let's find out if we can do it without creating bad feelings somewhere else. Because they've been, so nice to us. They really have. So I would defer to Faith on if we're going to put something like that together, if it's even possible. I'd let Faith talk about that, so.
Faith Al-Khatib, County Engineer, it is possible, but it is like any other government entity in the state. They hate earmarked funding.
Yeah.
But they have been doing it. Volusia County, they have been doing it. Other counties, they have been doing it, and they have been getting the funding.
Sure. Yeah, I understand the risk.
My understanding is that sometimes it delays other projects
Sure.
because of,
Yeah.
there's always unintended consequences.
Right. Well, I think it's a good idea and it's worth looking at. So we'll leave it at that.
It's also a probably one and only shot at getting that done this year.
That kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Andy?
Yeah, I just reiterate some of the comments. I mean, there's strong support in Tallahassee for a couple of the items, right? The preservation corridor, Pellisier Creek, preservation of lands, and then the floodplain corridor and preservation of water, drinking water. Those are high priority items that I think have a high chance of being looked at further. I think the health department one and compiling all the health services is a high priority. And on the emergency evacuation side, I think it's worth looking at, and there's a potential there for the non-school shelter. I think it's important that we be able to redistribute some of that needs away from the school system. They do it's a great partnership, and they do a great job of staffing. And I know Rimfire has been used as a special needs, but if there's an alternate that could be built, I think there's a lot of value in that. So
I think that was the idea of taking the special needs out of the school and having it as a separate facility.
Right. And that kind of goes along with that one. You almost have to have the other one to move the University of Florida and the IFAS out to, out to the corridor, out to that historic corridor. So I think, you almost have to have both to make that happen. But, we certainly need the space.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity if we were to combine that 7-mile stretch of Pellissier Creek and
That's a
out
good
to
one, too.
Princess Place. And I mean, that's
Yeah, that Pelser Creek is the only
Awesome.
Florida waterway left that's that kind of preserve. It's the only one left.
And it has some great opportunities for
And we
ecotourism.
pretty much own all the land around it, or either we do or St. John's, or, so it's really a beautiful place, and we don't want to get it messed up. So,
Keep in mind, we'll put forward whatever you approve eventually, but Speaker Renner will support whatever he is able to move forward. Last year, we had 5 funding requests and only 3 moved forward. He does, as you saw with the City of Palm Coast, support heavily infrastructure projects. So that was a big one. The land acquisition for conservation, that was another one that he supported. So we try to look for those projects. I know we added in a couple of projects that probably don't quite fit, but they're needed in the county. And so that we put them on the list. If you want to give it a shot and see what Speaker Renner does, he may not support them, and they won't move forward beyond this. But it's, just let me know what the consensus is, because we'll move forward with it, whatever ones you want to move forward with. I've already heard that you want to remove the study and design for safety improvements on the bridge, and that's fine. If there's anything you want to change, add, delete, let me know.
Commissioners, is any guidance you want to give her on these? I agree. I think we have a consensus to take off the
Bridge,
bridge
right. I have that.
I
What
would
about,
just see some sort of a write-up on the bridge's end or the roadway, tied to evacuation, needs or expansions.
right,
So,
I'll work with the engineering department to come up with a legislative ask on the 4 bridges for County Road 304 and any roads that are a part of the evacuation route.
thing to remember for us is evacuations are sometimes only thought of in hurricanes and that type, but our wildfires showed that we have a whole different need here in the county.
right.
yes, sir.
We've studied, because that's my district over there, we've studied the evacuation of the Hammock area. And according to Jonathan's stuff, it's a 6.5-hour program to get everybody off so you get everybody off there currently in 6.5 hours. You hope we never have to do that, but, so there's some other areas that probably need some work, but getting people off the island is not a problem, I don't think. Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll open up to public comment. Encourage the public to comment on either the county roadway and funding gap discussion or the legislative priorities discussion. Either one is fair game. I'll now open up public comment. Come on down.
Okay. Can I get your charts back? No. Okay. I'm going to dive down.
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, okay. I'm John Sorokowski. I live on Lakeshore Drive. I'm number 18 on your list on paving. And I just want to spend a couple of minutes maybe just diving down a little bit as we're waiting for the paving. We didn't talk a lot about on-paved roads. We have an on-paved road there and maintenance. But I'm John Sorokowski. I was an engineer for Lockheed Martin, IBM for a number of years. I actually had a daughter who was a Florida State road inspector for the state of Florida, and had the pleasure of actually putting a contract out for 2 miles of private road in my history, which was not a lot of fun. So I appreciate what you guys go through here. Just a real quick history here I've lived on Lakeshore Drive for 20 years, had a residence there. There's 16 homes there now. About 3 years ago, with the weather we had, we started getting a lot of flooding down Washington. And by the way, anybody not familiar, if you look at that Flagler County map on the behind you, we're in the bottom left-hand corner as far as you can get. And Washington is a Volusia County county road also. They've paved up to the county line. And then we turn into a sand road, basically. There's a ditch on one side, cattle grazing on the other, so it is very rural. And the situation we have, that road runs 3/4 of a mile, basically, down to Lakeshore, dead ends there, hits a private property, and then flows into an outstanding waterway of Lake Diston. Okay, and about 3 years ago, we started getting a lot of flooding where basically Washington, as it left the paved road in Volusia, it would flood. It was 3/4 of a mile, 4 or 5 inches deep. The water was not going into the ditch, and I actually talked to Ryan back then, of Road and Bridge, and I appreciate the support out of Road and Bridge. They respond very quickly if we have a washout, et cetera. But the situation is on that road right now, as I researched this, I went and looked at the requirements on the road construction, and what we've got out there is basically a flat road. There's no crown on the road. The maintenance is being done, and we're 33 miles from Bunnell. So every week, you're on 66 miles round trip for about 30 minutes worth of grading on the road. But anyway, the maintenance changed where we now have a berm permanently along that ditch. And it was explained to me that they didn't want water to go into the ditch because it would cause erosion. So all that water is staying on basically a sugar sand road. So when it floods, we're driving in slush and mud, and then all of that water goes down the road and into Lake Diston, okay? The other problem is where Lakeshore Drive is, we've got a 12-inch pipe with no concrete going under that road. So all the runoff from the cattle fields come in, plug that up, and wash out that intersection. So, and I'm out of time here, but I guess what I'm looking for is, can we, as we're waiting for paving, what can we do to get back more towards the FDOT standard on what an unpaved road should be maintained
Yeah,
as?
we'll look at it, okay?
Okay,
I guarantee it. We'll go take a look.
and Leanne has the information on this.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you.
Pennington, would you take care of that? Yes, sir.
Gene Dowd, I'm Coast resident, Flagler County. Mr. Chairman, I wasn't going to get up here, but Palm Coast has been discussing road maintenance quite a bit this past 6 months. And I hope that the county does the same thing and talks about maintaining the roads. I know it's tough to find the money to do that, but there's a 2012, there's some type of change in the funding. I wish I could tell you what it was, but now we're paying for that. And as you get older, I feel guilty that I've sat in my house for 9 years and my road, yes, over my cul-de-sac over the 9 years has deteriorated because the last 2 lots were built on. But that's all over. And if the county doesn't have the money or the city doesn't have the money to do it, it's the next generation that's going to pay that price. And I don't like that. So I hope the county finds a way, as much as I do the city, to fund a maintenance program that starts turning that around, because it's not going to be me that suffers or my wife. It's going to be the next generation. I don't think we want to leave it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker. See no one approach. Whoops, one more.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Marvin Clegg, also from that very, very southwest corner of Flagler County. As Mr. Sorokowski pointed out to you all, we get a lot of our emergency services pretty much from Volusia County through mutual aid. We very seldom see anybody except Road and Bridge coming there once a week to push the dirt around on Washington. I'm not here to ask for a street in front of my house to be paved. I'm here to ask for a street down the road that feeds directly into an outstanding Florida waterway called Lake Diston, to keep that road from washing down into the lake week after week as we get our rains back. I was disappointed to see that Washington was number 18 on the list. You know, I remember years ago when Uncle Jack was on this board, and we got mad at him because he voted to take on 550 miles of Palm Coast roadways when Palm Coast was not a city yet, as county responsibility. So I understand we all have our priorities and so forth, but I would ask that when I contact county engineering 2 months ago and say, hey, what can we do to change this priority? I would like to hear back from county engineering. A month later, when I asked county engineering again with a copy to administration, what can we do about increasing prioritization on this outstanding Florida waterway road in Flagler County, and don't hear back anything, it doesn't inspire confidence in us that county staff is aware of this. We feel very forgotten over there. Years ago, when County Attorney Leland Shaw lived on the other side of Lake Diston, their road over there serving 19 houses was paved. It's been paved twice in the time since Colonel Shaw was county attorney. On our side of the lake, it's never been paved. Again, I'm not asking for Lakeshore Drive to be paved, but Washington, which is a continuation of Volusia's Road, it does need to be paved. It does flow into the lake. You can look at a map and see that. My daughter, who sits here with me, helped me rescue a lady biker there a few months ago who wrecked because, as Al Hadid and Sean know, apparently the laws only require us to put a sign up there that, hey, pavement ends. Well, duh, you can see that. What it doesn't tell you is that as you get closer to the end of that road where all the silt washes down the road, because there is no drainage ditch, that turns into sugar sand, and the lady wrecked there, and my daughter and I helped correct her and get her back on the road and headed the other way. You know, it only takes one lawsuit, probably to cost more, but think about what it costs to send a grader every week, all this distance around Lake Diston, through Volusia County, back into Flagler to push dirt in a substandard road that doesn't meet state regs. We can't ask to put more lands in conservation unless we, the government, take care of the outstanding Florida way we already have in conservation, so to speak. Why do we want more to take care of when we can't take care of what we've got? We really need to get a citizens committee to look at things like this. I ask you all to do that. It would be free. A citizens advisory committee to look at our budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg.
Thank you.
Got it?
Yes.
You got it. All right. Commissioner Pennington's got that for action. All right. Anybody else? See you when no one approach, I'll bring it back to
Mr.
the...
Chair, just want to make sure I catch you before you adjourn, if I could. We issued an emergency order this weekend, and
Right.
our ordinance requires us to bring it to your attention as soon as practical, and this was the first time you're meeting in the sunshine. And just very briefly, we don't have an ordinance on the books at present that prevents fires on the beach during turtle season. And because we're under a declared state of emergency and all that has happened to the turtles with Hurricane Nicole and the new nests that are up in the newly renourished beach, the Turtle Patrol urged us to do whatever we could. And so realizing that a bonfire was planned, we did issue an emergency order to stop those during turtle season on the beach. It'll be brought to your next regular meeting agenda.
I saw it and I read it. I assume all my commissioners read it, yeah. It was fine, I think it's needed, and, yeah, we support that.
Thank you.
Commissioners, anything else you'd like to bring up? It's just a workshop, so, although we haven't advertised any other thing. Hey, Don, anything else? Leanne? No. All right, well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second, we're adjourned. Thank you.